Welcome back, everybody, to Catching You. We had the great honor of interviewing Delaney Spaulding, a UCLA alumni and Olympian. We cut this into two parts, so this is part one. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to Catching You, a dad and daughter softball journey. I'm Rusty, a dad who's been in the dugout and on the sidelines.
And I'm Lacie, the daughter whose journey through softball has been filled with incredible wins, tough losses, and so many lessons both on and off the field.
For the past 16 years, we've navigated the highs and lows of softball together, from the local fields to national tournaments and everything in between.
From the challenges of recruitment during COVID to the mental and emotional roller coaster that comes with being a student athlete, we'll be sharing the perspectives of both the parent and athlete and firsthand experience of the impact of sports on mental health and the importance of support from the sidelines.
Welcome back, everybody, to Catching You. I'm your co-host, Rusty Ham. With me is my beautiful daughter, Lacie, back from college for the summer. And we have a special guest with us, Delaney Spaulding. Welcome, Delaney, to Catching You.
Thank you guys for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, if you've been living under a rock, if you don't know who Delaney Spaulding is, obviously she's played for UCLA from 2014 to 2017. I'm not sure how long you played for the USAA Pride, but just right after that, she became a professional. And then she's also an Olympian silver medalist, right? In the 2020, actually it's 2021, but 2020
Yes.
Olympics. Welcome, Delaney. Yeah, we got hooked up by a fellow workout partner, right? She's your workout bestie, Kelly Urin
Yes.
from F45, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to give them a shout out.
I don't know if they need a shout out, but
I wanted to give them. Yeah, we'll give them a shout out. Delaney, this is a father-daughter podcast, so we'll just start from the beginning. Where did you grow up? When did you start playing softball? All this, just a background of who you are.
Yeah. So I grew up in Rancho Cucamonga. It's not too far from where I now live, but there's 4 girls in my family. So I am the youngest of 4. I'm the baby. And we're pretty spread out. So I'm 10 years younger than my oldest, and then 7 and 6 years from my sister that's closest to me. So I grew up at the softball field. All my sisters played. 2 of them went on to play D1 at University of Oklahoma and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I think you mentioned that earlier before we were recording. And so I pretty much was destined to play softball. I was at the field at a very young age, always. My favorite memories were taking naps at the softball field and then just hearing the game being played in the background. It's like one of my first memories, actually. Or catching lizards in the back fields at the softball fields. I just have a lot of memories at the softball field, off the field in general. And then I started playing around the age of 8 years old, which is actually a little late, I would say, because of my older sisters, but went right into rec ball, played for my Rancho Cucamonga Ace softball. So I played in my backyard, basically, and then played a couple years of All-Stars and then went right into travel ball. And then the rest is history from there. But definitely a family sport. My mom played softball. My dad was athletic when he was younger. So they definitely knew the importance of sports in the role as a child. So we definitely were always doing something. And it definitely blessed me and it blessed my family. And obviously with the biggest accomplishment of the Olympic Games, I think was a huge family accomplishment as well.
Right. You mentioned rec ball. How many years of rec ball, and then when did you transition to travel?
I don't know how many seasons, but it was about 2 years. So I know there's a couple of seasons in a year. And then I went on to play travel ball at the age of around 12-ish. So I would say about a couple years in rec ball, a couple years in All-Stars. And then I went on with some friends and my dad to play in travel ball.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds familiar, right, Lace?
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar. My first travel ball coach was a family friend that I played All-Stars with.
Yeah,
So
same.
went right into Team Mizuno in 10U.
Yeah, we have that.
Lacie just mentioned. Yeah, Lacie just mentioned team. Was it your first travel, or when did you? Because I know you played at Team Mizuno with Stiff, so describe your travel ball experience briefly here.
Yeah, I'm not sure our age gap, but I played with Mizuno. Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about Team Mizuno in a while. I want to say it was 14U. Yeah, it was 14U. It might have even been 18U because I started out with the Corona Angels and then did like 1 year with the Firecrackers. And then I went straight into Doug Meyer's 16U team. And at this time, I was
Hmm.
training with Mike Stith. So I had a relationship with Mike. And I went on to join Mike's team after the 16, or no, I was on Gary Hanning's team. Sorry. I was on Gary Hanning's team for a couple of years. I was a freshman, I believe. I was an eighth grade and 16U
Right.
freshman on Gary's team, played with a lot of insanely talented women that went on to play D1. It was very cool. I was like starry eyed. I was super young. And then Mike Stiff decided to leave the Batbusters for a couple of years, and maybe I think it was a couple of years, and that's when I joined Team Mizuno for a
Yep.
year. And it was actually my senior year for sure. Again, this was a while ago. It's starting to come back to me, but I don't know. I can't remember if it was my junior and senior year, but it was for sure my senior year with Mike. And but like I said, I'd been training with him forever and decided to jump
Yeah.
ship and join his team. And now he's back with the Batbusters.
Yep. Yep. Well, yeah. So that's our connection is
Mhm.
when Mike Stiff created Team Lacie was in first year 10. That was her first experience. So we were actually in the same organization. We didn't know it,
Yeah, I was a
but
little bit
so
older
that's
now
our
that I
kind of our.
yeah. Now that I remember, I was a little bit older. If you were on 10U, I'm pretty sure I was an 18U.
Yeah. Yeah. She was 9 when she first started. She
Yeah.
has some cute videos of her because I think Mike's brother took a video of them
Oh.
when they were 9 years old. This is the cutest video of all time.
Yeah. Or it was like my name, my position, my age. I
Oh.
don't know. I think it got cut off, but it was a cute little video of
Yeah.
like our little never settle t-shirt.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was really cute.
that's sweet.
Very cool. Yeah, you're in, so you get you're at with Hanny. It's a very, back then one of the major is about Batbusters, Crown Angels, and Firecrackers were the major three, right? I think SoCal is too. But
Yeah.
describe your recruiting. I know, Lacie wrote a letter to coach at the UCLA when she was. How old were you when you wrote that letter to her?
I think 10 probably, like when we started getting into Team Mizuno and then transferred over to Batbusters, we started writing handwritten
Yeah.
letters to coaches. So I don't really
Right.
remember what the pathway leading up to that was, but yeah, I remember addressing it like Coach in a way Perez, and
Yeah,
I
you might
don't
have been
know.
a freshman. You might have been a freshman, Delaney, when she wrote that letter to her.
So,
So describe the recruiting process then, and then if you just what do you think of the recruiting process now? Give us a back then, and what do you think about it now?
yeah. So I graduated high school in 2013. And so a couple years before that, I was on Doug Meyer's team, and that was a big recruiting year for me. I was in, and I don't want to, because I got recruited very young. So I don't want to, I don't know, freak people out or those that are listening or athletes, but the times have changed now again. So where you can't get contacted or recruited this young, but I was recruited when I was in eighth grade. And that summer was a really big summer for me. And I had a very fun and short recruiting experience. And I loved every bit of it. I will say, I know that everyone has their own path and their own kind of story. All of my sisters, we all have different stories. Granted, they are older than me, but it's so different. Every story is so different. But mine was very fun and it was very short in the fact that as soon as UCLA came into the picture, it was a done deal. I went on a couple of visits, whether it was because a tournament was in that area and I would go visit a university, or whether I actually flew out to visit the university. But as soon as I went onto UCLA's campus, it was a done deal. And I committed shortly after that. And pretty much the rest is history. But I committed around I came into my freshman year of high school. And yeah, I just, like I said, I knew right away. And I know that that's pretty early, considering what the rules are today. And I know there was a time when it was different and you could pretty much commit and get recruited at any age. And when we saw sixth graders, eighth graders committing to these colleges, and who knows if they even wanted to play softball in the next couple of years, who knows if they would even develop in the next couple of years. And I know that was a lot of backlash. And I agreed with that. And so I'm very thankful now, just at least for our sport, that it has gotten back to that old school kind of recruitment of your junior year in high school. You can be contacted or you can have that relationship. I hope that colleges are still sending letters in the mail, because that was the most fun part of being recruited, was going to the mailbox and seeing the letters from the different universities. Pretty sure I still have those letters in my memorabilia. But yeah, recruiting is, I think, a little bit back to what it should be. And I always tell girls that ask for advice or what have you, that to remember that you are recruiting the school as well. You are interviewing the coaches, you're interviewing the team, and to always talk to the girls that are currently on the roster. And I think that's a very big, important key to recruiting, is they want you to go to their school. And so if you treat it as if you're interviewing them, I think is when you'll get the answers that you're looking.
Yeah, that kinda develops, like, some confidence in them, right? "Hey, I'm interviewing you. You want me? I wanna make
Yeah.
sure this is a good fit." So it kinda
Yeah.
builds that confidence. And then Lace, I think your freshman year is when they changed that rule, right, Lace?
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely freshman year, because I was going on these visits, but nothing was really happening. But I think right when, I don't know what time around my freshman year, but then they shut it off and I couldn't talk to anyone anymore and had to send out my emails myself, and it was crazy. But then, yeah, and then junior year, my COVID year hit, so my process was definitely up and down. And I was gonna ask, since you were recruited so early, like freshman year, you committed freshman year, how was your training process going through high school? Like knowing that you're going to UCLA, but you weren't gonna be there in 4 years. So
Mhm.
you still had to train and improve. Like, how was that for you as an athlete?
Yeah, it definitely gave me the most motivation, I would say. I had good people around me. My family was very supportive. Obviously, my parents pushed me, and I know we'll touch on that later. But Mike Stith is the greatest softball coach, I think. I owe everything to him. He's the reason why I'm an Olympian, and I've told him that. But I also did strength training before he had dynamic athletics. It was EM that was in the building. And so that was a focus for me. But Mike Stith, sorry, he set me straight. And I say this now because my career is pretty much over, but I was a brat when I was younger, and Mike Smith, he set me straight. He knew my abilities, and he knew that my attitude can sometimes get in my way, and he told it like it was, because that's the type of athlete that I was. I did not like sugarcoating. And I think that if you have a coach that knows who you are outside of softball and really understands you and how to get the best out of you, then you're going to strive. And that's what Mike did for me alongside my parents, obviously. And that's definitely what helped me get better every single day. You probably understand, we went to Orange County, we went to STC multiple times a week, doing his fielding classes, doing his hitting classes, and then training, physical training as well. So I definitely had the motivation, obviously, with UCLA on my shoulders, but Mike was not going to let me not be great. And so I think it's important to have good people in your corner that understand how to push you. Maybe you're the athlete that needs to be motivated and needs to be topped up. I definitely was not that person. I needed somebody to tell me like it is. And if I'm slacking off, I needed somebody to tell me that. And he was that for me.
Yeah, great point. Because Lacie was a bat buster from Team Mizuno bat buster until she was 16 years old. So
Mhm.
she was with Campbell. We're practicing with Stiff, and we're at STC twice a week taking
Yep.
pitching lessons. And so we were in the same boat as you. We saw it firsthand how he would make sure people were in line. Awesome stuff. Let me, yeah, I think make sure. Yeah, let's combine that. I want to get your thoughts on the recruiting process now, and then combine that with the transfer portal because the transfer portal is out of control. So what advice would you give a girl who's entering their junior year and then just having that transfer portal in the back of their mind? Because tons of girls that commit, we've seen it multiple times, right? They commit, they go to school for 1 year and then they just take off, right?
Yep.
You mentioned it. You're interviewing that school. What are your thoughts on the recruiting process now with the transfer portal kind of lingering?
Yeah. So you're talking to someone that is very prideful in my university or my athletic program at my university. And yeah, as soon as I signed the dotted line, I absolutely could not stand USC. Arizona softball was a big rival. You're talking to somebody I was committed to UCLA, and that was that. So I'm not a huge fan of the transfer portal. With that being said, I think there are certain instances that you should get out of a situation. I completely understand that. There's also COVID was very impactful with the transfer portal as well, with the fifth years and finding a program that has major for your another degree, whatever that, those are separate cases. But I have a hard time with, yes, an athlete going to 3 different universities in their 4-year span. I have a problem with athletes if they're not getting that starting spot, they just go up and they just leave and they're not I don't know if it's not necessarily they're not willing to put in the hard work to earn a starting position or what case it may be, but I fully believe that you gain more character, you earn more character by doing the hard thing, and it's not going to be easy. It's the same thing as if you leave softball beyond the white lines, you're not always going to have that pretty perfect boss. Sometimes bosses are not easy to communicate with, easy to be in the same building with, easy to be in the same meeting with. And what are we teaching our athletes if something gets hard, they just up and leave? I think that softball, unfortunately, only takes us so far, and we have to think about those things. But I am very prideful in the fact that my 4 years at UCLA were not easy at all. I'm very fortunate enough to say that I started at UCLA, but it was very hard for me. And I just knew that I needed to buckle down and I wanted to earn a degree from UCLA because that was going to open doors for me in the future. And I think sometimes us athletes, we forget that we are student athletes and a degree from the university that you choose. And that's another thing going back to the recruiting process is what do you want to do potentially when you get older? Do you want to be a nurse? Do you want to study whatever it is that you want to study? You have to look at those when you're getting recruited as well. And that will help you in that decision in the end. And the transfer portal won't even necessarily be a tool for you. But yeah, the transfer portal is tricky. I know that, and we're filming at such a interesting time right now towards the end of college season when you see the Pac-12 dismantling and you see all of these athletes getting into the portal. And I know that there's some schools in the Pac-12 where they have 0 returning players, and that's very sad. And we don't know the circumstances, but I'm assuming that it has a lot to do with the Pac-12 dismantling. And so that's very hard, and you can find grace in that. I was talking with one of my good friends who also played in the Pac-12, and when I was getting recruited and I'm in the middle of my years and this was not talked about, but if UCLA went to the Big Ten when I'm a sophomore going into my junior year, it's something that I would have to really think about. And if I had no idea about this in my recruiting process, and then this was sprung on me in the middle of my 4 years, I would be very upset. And so this is a circumstance where I understand and I get why you would want to leave. But again, that degree or that major that you're focusing on, some of the good outweighs the bad, I will say.
Wait, and talking about the Pac-12 dismantling, and now they're going into a different conference where it's very pro football and not really think about traveling
Yeah.
wise. I've talked to a lot of my teammates. I've had some friends in the Pac-12 where you have 3-game series and you're traveling probably Thursday morning, Thursday night, won't get home until Sunday night, maybe
Yep.
around midnight, 1 a.m. from your last game on Sunday. And then you have school in the morning on Monday. And meanwhile, you have all these assignments that you have to be doing, due dates, tests, exams. While, say, football, they have one game on a Friday or whatever day they're playing, and then they get to go home right after.
Yeah, I
So
know.
that's and you're talking about, like, education and getting your degree and everything, that just makes it 10 times harder. So, I understand that perspective of Pac-12, you're just going West Coast, right? And now
Yeah.
you're having to go across the country almost maybe every other weekend. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
and those
traveling.
SEC, FEC
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry. I was just gonna say the SEC teams, the ACC, they're coming out to the West Coast maybe 1 or 2 times, that's it, and we're going out there 5, 6 times, 8 it's just crazy to think about the travel that the softball and the baseball players have to do because it's just crazy that talk about student athlete, they're gonna be true student athletes because they're gonna have to do a lot of things remote, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's unfortunately probably is something that was not thought about. Obviously, I know that a lot of these ADs see green and they see money, and that's a different subject. But I think
Right.
another big component, yeah, I know. We just laugh it off. But I think another big
Yeah.
component is our families. I grew up in Southern California. My parents and my family were at every single one of my games, whether it was home or away. And UCLA didn't leave the state very much other than Pac-12 play. And I'm sure that's the same for any other Pac-12 school and any other California school as well. So that would be a big component for me as well. And plus, it's cold in Michigan and Ohio State, and it's cold over there. I don't want to play in that.
Yeah, and humid and it's humid in Oklahoma at this time. I'm sure it's miserable for some people that grew up in Southern California. Let's, pivot. You mentioned family. Let's pivot to because this is a father-daughter podcast. So let's get into your relationship. I said specifically your dad, but you also mentioned prior to getting on here that your mom was a big influence as well. So describe because Delaney and I've told this story a couple times when she was getting into pitching and she started doing pretty well in team as she started becoming kind of the number one pitcher and for the Bat Busters. I was hard on her. I've never pitched an inning in my life, but I'm telling her that she needs to hit her spots and we're in the backyard and she has a terrible session. So I ignore her and I don't treat her very well. And
Mhm.
she came to me crying, I think when either 12 or 13 in the kitchen. She started crying. Dad, why are you treating me this way? I'm not doing this on purpose. And so I backed off as a father. Describe your relationship with your parents and was it similar? Was it, I don't know how you would describe that with your parents.
Yeah, it was similar. It was hard. I think it goes back to what Lacie asked me earlier about committing early and then having those years to prepare for UCLA. And I think with that came a lot of pressure. And my parents did put pressure on me to be great. And sometimes that was hard to deal with. But looking back now, because like I said, I'm pretty much done and I've accomplished a lot in my career. Looking back now, it was the best thing for me. It was very hard in the fact that my parents, they were the same way. If I didn't have a good game, the car ride home was silent. If I didn't hit as good as I should have, they were hard on me. But I commend you, Lacie, for speaking up and for saying something because I was not that daughter. I didn't necessarily say Why are you doing that? I'm not doing this on purpose. So I think the communication is very important to both sides. And the fact that you listened and you backed off as a coach, I think is important as well. I wish I would have done that. But in hindsight, I'm so blessed to have two parents that cared so much and that knew how good I was and knew my potential and knew that I did have an attitude problem, and they pushed me and they wanted me to be great and they checked me when I needed to be checked and they motivated me. And I will never take that for granted, and I'm very thankful that I was able to go to a local school so that they could see the benefits that they also received as well for me going to UCLA. And then obviously with the Olympics, I think it's a testament to how much they pushed me because, like I said, I would have not been this good if I didn't have people that were in my corner that wanted me to be great.
Yeah, as a parent, through this podcast, I had an aha moment where I, even just talking about it, she's with the Bat Buster organization, she's with Mark Campbell, she's with
Yeah.
Mike Stith, and as a parent, I felt the pressure like she needed to perform in front of these coaches. So as a parent, I was feeling the pressure because I wanted her to succeed. So I was putting my angst on her, and it wasn't right. I shouldn't have done it. And Lace, I don't know if you can touch on because you talked about looking back. You said, "What this showed that I cared." I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, as I grew older, I was what, 12 when I came to you, but the reason I did come to you was it was affecting a relationship outside of softball.
Mhm.
So if you kept pushing me, which was great, and I needed that, and like you said, Delaney, that's like what you needed in order to be successful, and I needed that push, I needed that motivation, but it was like after a bullpen in our backyard, we come inside and have dinner, and he'd still be mad at me. So I was like, "Can we just have a normal family dinner? Move past the bad bullpen I just had." And I've talked about it a lot on here as well, is that I'm already very hard on myself as it is. And as a college athlete now, like I've told my dad, "Hey, I just need you to listen right now, and then you can give your feedback after."
Mhm.
But yeah, so it was after that talk, it was just like, let's leave it where it was, like, at our bullpen, and then after, we can calm down and have, like, normal father-daughter relationship and do all the fun things that we make all the jokes that we want. Just finding that balance and having that separation between, "You need to be better," and then, "You're my daughter," type thing was what we needed to get to, and I think we accomplished that pretty early. And like you said, like, I had these coaches already on my butt already, and I'm grateful for all the coaches that I've had growing up, especially in that Buster organization, and I'm grateful I ended my career in the Bad Buster organization. It's pretty great.
Yeah. So the last question I had when I was doing the pre work on this, if you were to on that note, if you were to talk to the young Delaney, what and again, talking to young Delaney is you're talking because our audience is varied, right? It's from rec ball girls to girls that are playing college. So, if you were to talk to young Delaney, which young Delaney is the young girls that are out there right now, is there any advice or anything you would do differently?
Yeah, and yeah, I would stick up for myself more. So, like I said, I struggle with my attitude and I show it a lot. I have like an I'm sure some of you know what an RBS is or like a stank face or whatever. And I play a little slower or it looks like I don't care when I'm out there. And that was very hard for some coaches when they were coaching me. And I would get kicked out of practices or they just would think that I didn't want to be there or I was disrespecting them. And that was very hard for me because it's not that I didn't understand, but I couldn't articulate exactly what it is that I wanted to say to them whenever I was getting yelled at or I was getting kicked out of practice. So that was very hard. So I wish I would stick up for myself and I would have understood myself a little bit more or talked to my parents a little bit more about this situation. And then with that, I would say find coaches and find role models in your life that truly understand you outside of the game. And as soon as I found Doug Myers and Mike Stith, my career changed. They understood that's just my face. They understand how much I love this game and how hard I work. And that was not going to stop them. They knew it was on the inside. They knew how hard I worked. And my face at the moment, because I'm processing or I'm thinking or I'm concentrating, wasn't going to affect how they were going to treat me as a coach. So I would say number one, is definitely understand who you are as a person and as a player, and that it is okay. Yes, you want to be respectful. And yes, you want to always show enthusiasm and show how much you do care, but sometimes it's out of your control. Number two, find good people around you that understand who you are as a person and that can push you. And they're not going to penalize it for you when you are just being yourself.
Yeah, that's great. That's great stuff. Thank you for listening to everybody. Lace, I love you, and we'll catch everybody else on the other side. Enjoy part 2 next week.